folks. I'm Doug Haney. I'm the Executive Director of Polyphony Music Resources, and I'm delighted that you're joining us today and overhearing this conversation with my friend and colleague, Mark Green. And we are celebrating with Mark his 25-year tenure at the First Baptist Church of Gainesville, Georgia. His 25th anniversary was March 1st of this year. So, Mark, congratulations to you. What an incredible accomplishment. I'm just thrilled that anyone these days can stay at a place for so long. We're celebrating with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. When I
Yeah.
first got here, I thought if I could have 10 good years, that would be great. And the fact that God's allowed me to be 25 and still going, I'm very grateful. And very
Oh,
grateful to have been in one place where I could raise my daughter, just in one church.
yeah. That's oh wow, what a gift to her. Yeah. And what a gift you are to that congregation. I know some folks in that congregation.
Thank you.
So, well, let's go back to the beginning. Tell our listeners just a little bit about you, where you were reared, sort of early influences, maybe influential teachers, and what were you up to before you arrived at First Baptist Church Gainesville 25 years ago?
I grew up in Royal, Alabama, which is about 45 miles north of Birmingham. It's a
Okay.
small community, maybe 300 people. I grew up on a poultry and cattle farm.
Oh,
So we went to just a nearby church in my community. It was called Liberty Hill Missionary Baptist Church.
how
Very
about that?
small. We didn't have any choirs. We just had very hearty congregational singing
Yeah.
and different families or individuals who would do special music. So that was my beginning. My mother loved music and insisted that all of her sons take piano, and it stuck with
Great.
me. So I
Nice.
started, taking piano when I was 7,
Okay.
and um, I had a grandfather who was a Sacred Harp singer, so he would always bring songbooks to our home anytime he came, and would insist on singing Sacred Harp music. And then also he would have these new convention book singings. He'd want me to sit down and play for him so he
Wow.
could get familiar with some of the songs before he went to a singing. So
New convention books.
yes, they came out twice a year.
Okay. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we
Too
always had
bad.
music in our home, and my family would sing together. My mom and dad, my brothers, we would sing gospel music. We would often share things at church. So that was kind of my beginning. When I was in the 5th grade, I started taking piano from a lady named Bernice Hill, who
Bernice
lived
Hill.
up near Boaz, Alabama. So it was about a 40-mile commute one way to go to a piano lesson. But she was the wife of a singing school teacher, and he would come to our church every summer and teach a singing school for a week.
How
And
about
so
that?
that's how I became acquainted with her. And she was really good at kind of teaching the gospel style of playing. And so I studied with her 5th through 8th grade. And then she told me she really had taken me as far as she could go. And she got me an interview
Mm.
with Glenn Mays, who is the head of the music department at Sneed State Junior College at the time in Boaz. So I started studying with Glenn uh, in my 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. And then I switched over to another teacher at the college for my senior year, Dr. Melinda Kitchens Brooks, and she helped me prepare my scholarship auditions for college. But backing up to the 5th grade, when I was in the 5th grade, our church lost our pianist, and we didn't have anyone in the church who could play. So some of the leaders came to me and asked me if I would
Oh
consider
my.
becoming the church pianist. And I had just gotten into hymn playing, but
Okay.
didn't really have other options. So I agreed, and I became the volunteer church pianist, was never paid, and from
Sure.
5th grade until I left for college.
Oh my.
So I would play for all worship services, for revivals, for weddings, for funerals. I was doing it. So I
Wow.
cannot remember not being involved in church music.
How about that? How about that? I just want to make one comment about your teacher. Bernice, you said was her name.
Yes.
What what a remarkably humble spirit she must have had to say, I've taken you as far as I can. Now let me hand you off to someone else. That's just extraordinary. I just
It
want to acknowledge that.
it really was. And she called up this Glenn Mays, whom I did not
Uh,
know at all, and she arranged the interview, went with me to be interviewed by him to see if he would take me on as kind of a side student.
right.
And I really appreciated that. We would drive 40 miles one way and she would charge me $3.50 for a lesson. So when we went to interview with Glenn, he charged $10 an hour, and
Okay.
which is really cheap by today's standards. But my
Sure.
parents had to think long and hard to decide whether
Wow.
they could make that work. But they
Wow.
agreed. And when I started studying with Glenn, he was such a prince of a fella, a devout Christian. He was also minister of music at First Baptist Boaz, Alabama, in addition to being chair of the music department. So it was the first time in my life that I got a picture of what a minister of music looked like. And he would
Wow.
invite me to come see productions at his church, and I would kind of see him in action at church as well as studying piano with him. So he was a huge inspiration to me, and it was really through studying with him that I decided I wanted to go to college and major in music.
How about that? How about that? Yeah, quite a parade of musical heroes you have there. Where did you serve? What churches did you serve? Well, tell us a little bit more about then, undergraduate and graduate, and then churches that you served before you got to First Baptist Gainesville. Just a quick synopsis.
Okay. Well, I went to the University of Alabama and I did a Bachelor of Music and Piano Performance.
Okay.
During my junior year there, I got involved in BSU choir, and through some acquaintances there, I got invited to become pianist at a church in Northport, Flatwoods Baptist Church. So my senior year, I served there and I also worked with their youth some. And the pastor there was a Southwestern grad. He was retired from a larger church, but he began to talking to me about seminary, and through those conversations and discernment, that church ended up endorsing me, to
Oh,
go to Southwestern.
nice.
So during my years at Southwestern, I served as interim pianist in several churches, and then did a youth choir internship at University Baptist Church and
Right.
for under Joel Michael. And at that
Wonderful.
time, Donna Butler was his associate, and I got to know her really well.
Lovely.
So that was a great experience. And then
Remarkable people.
following seminary, Dean McKinney asked me to stay on and teach as a full-time adjunct piano teacher for a year. His wife was going on sabbatical, so
Oh, okay.
I shared a studio with Miriam Ely and taught for a year. And during that time, I was organist at First Baptist Burleson, Texas, and as well as director of their young musicians choir.
Yeah.
So when I finished there, I got called to a church in Montgomery, Woodley Baptist Church, in 1987, May of 87. So I was minister of music and youth at that church. And then I went from there downtown to First Baptist Montgomery and served for 5 years as the assistant minister of music and church pianist under Bill Roper.
Mm.
And it was in that church where I met my wife and was married. And the same month that we married, I moved to Forsyth, Georgia. And I was at First Baptist Church, Forsyth, Georgia for 3.5 years as minister of music. Down
I don't
close
think
to
I knew that. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was a great place for us to start our marriage. But I had a wonderful pastor to work with, and just really enjoyed that town. We moved from there to Coleman, Alabama, and I was minister of music at 7th Street Baptist Church. And it was
Okay.
during that time that our daughter Lucy was born. And that was a very difficult period. It was kind of the best of times and worst of times because we were having a
Mm.
baby. The situation with the church was not turned out to not be how it was presented to me in the interview.
Right.
It just was a very hard place to serve. And also during that time, my parents, who had been married 42 years, went through divorce.
Oh my.
You're
Yeah.
juggling those three things. But anyway, we were recommended to First Baptist Gainesville by some of our friends from Forsyth, Georgia, who had connections here. And so I got a phone call asking to submit my resume, and I did. And we came over for an interview. Thought we'd just have an interview, see some friends, go home, that'd be it.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
we came here, we thought we cannot not consider this. We felt like
Right.
God was just really opening a wonderful door for us. So we moved here in March of 99 and have been here 25 years. So
Wow.
it's been 37 years full time in church ministry.
Okay. Wow. That's just remarkable and wonderful. And yeah, again, we're just celebrating with you, and I hope the church celebrated you well back in the spring. I remember seeing some pictures on Facebook, so I have a sense that they did really take a moment to say a big thank you to the Mark Green family.
They did. I had planned a composer weekend with Joel Rainey,
Okay.
and he it turned out that he came on the weekend that was my anniversary, and I went to my pastor and I said, let's celebrate my anniversary this weekend. If you're gonna do anything, do it the weekend after he's here. But unbeknownst to me, the choir got in touch with Joel Rainey and commissioned him to
Okay.
write an anthem in honor of my 25th anniversary, and they premiered that weekend. They had
Oh,
met secretly to practice it and prepare it, and then Joel Rainey directed it, and I got to just sit out and listen to it. But it was an anthem called "In the Stillness of Grace."
huh.
It's absolutely lovely. Some of my favorite scripture passages are quoted in it, and Hope has agreed to publish it in the spring of 2025. So
Okay.
I was very honored by that, and that just made the weekend extra special.
In the Stillness of Grace by Joel Rainey, to be published by Hope next year.
Yes.
Great, great. Well, thank you for telling us a little bit about your story. I know that's a very truncated version, but I wanted folks to kind of know a little bit more about who Mark is and your journey that led up to the beginning of the 25 years at Gainesville. So I want you to think back to 1999, and I really want you to think back to those first 5 years and just thinking, if you can remember what it was like to be in this new place, as wonderful as it was, what kind of challenges did you face, especially in those early years? I'm also curious about maybe who your predecessor was. Did you follow someone with a long tenure? You can comment on that if you'd like to, but I want to know about, especially about your first 5 years. What do you remember?
Well, when I came here, the light just went out. So give me just a second.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Those automatic lights do that. What do we have? 20 more minutes?
I when I got to the church, the pastor who was here was new. He had been here 6 months, and
Okay.
the church was very excited about his leadership. And I was coming onto a very seasoned staff. Most of them had been here for many years, and I
Hmm.
was the youngest person at that time
Oh my.
on the
Okay.
church staff.
Yeah.
Um, so, but there was a lot of rebuilding to do. They had had a 3-year interim in
Oh my.
music, and
Okay.
they didn't want to fill that position until they got a new pastor. And
Oh, right,
uh,
right.
the former minister of music is someone that I knew and loved. But he had been here 13 years.
Okay.
He had really I think the thing he loved most was working with the youth choir and
Okay.
had a really great rapport with the youth. But during that interim, the church, a lot of people had left or maybe were waiting in the wings. The former minister of music, he had, from what I was told, would kind of spend freely, and they kept trying to work with him to stay within his budget, and he never would commit to do that. So they ended up, the committee that was, I guess, running things during the interim ended up asking him to leave. And so
Ah.
he did, but when he did, he pulled some of the key leadership with him, and they formed a
Oh,
smaller church kind of right out our back door. I didn't know any of this till I had gotten here.
sure. That
So
that often is the case.
yeah, so I get here, and they said that during the interim, the choir had gotten down to like 12 in the choir, and the youth was down to like five. They had a wonderful set of handbells, but they had been sitting in dilapidated cases in some storage facility and had not been used in several years. So just came in with a sense of rebuilding. But
Okay.
they had planned a worship musical called My Utmost for His Highest. And when I got here in March, they had scheduled to do it like in 4 weeks. And they had already contracted an orchestra, and they wanted me to put it together, find soloists, find testimonies, and do it. So in the first month, I'm moving in and out of my office as they kind of recondition it. And I'm trying to put together this musical, but we ended up having 50 people singing it. So it turned out
Oh,
great. And that
okay.
was kind of a big kickstart, I guess, to my tenure here. And then
Yeah.
I began working with our youth choir and rebuilding that. I took our handbells and had them refurbished, and I began a youth handbell choir. I began an adult handbell choir. Um, And then they have a small church orchestra, and I started meeting with them on Tuesday nights and was just trying to grow that. So um, I got a lot of things. That was my biggest challenge, is just trying to rebuild and get people back involved. And after maybe a year or two, the smaller church that had started disbanded, I guess, and some of the people who had pulled away had heard that things going on here were good, and everybody liked the pastor, everybody liked me, and so they started coming back. So we started
Nice.
getting some of those members who are still singing today, and so that was kind of a time of reconciliation and just kind of pulling back together. That was beautiful.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, sometimes we might, we're certainly prayerful and trying to be discerning about going to a new place, but if we see that the numbers are way down, we may be a little nervous about stepping into that and wondering, well, can we turn this ship around? Uh, Although at the same time, I have found that that can be a real opportunity, right? It's almost nowhere to go but up in some ways when things, have really had some setbacks.
I think that was the case here. And I think the leadership saw the potential and saw what could happen. And they were very supportive of me and gave me tools and uh, to make things happen.
Okay.
In fact, the personnel committee, after they had watched me for 2 or 3 years, they saw that I was doing too much. And they
Mm,
decided that they wanted to create an associate position to bring someone
wow.
to help me. So that happened, and I was able to bring in Tommy Shepard as my first associate minister of music,
Really?
and he
Really?
served here before going to Lubbock. Yeah,
I'm
and
not
I've had
sure that I
someone
know that. Yeah.
continually in that position ever since, which has
Wow.
been great.
How remarkable that the personnel committee observed your good work and also said, okay, we recognize you're burning the candle at both ends, and but we don't want you to burn out. So we're gonna help make this more manageable,
And they did,
sustainable.
yes.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here, Mark. Just looking over the scope of your ministry, and maybe this is even beyond First Baptist Gainesville. I'm curious, what has brought you the greatest joy over these years in music ministry? What about your work do you love most? Would love to hear about that from you.
Oh my goodness, there's several things. One, I just love building relationships with people. And I've loved the opportunity to be able to disciple children, youth, and adults one-on-one through music, as well as in groups.
Hmm.
I'm an accompanist, and I'll often in worship will accompany small groups or solos, whether they're
Nice.
vocal or instrumental. And because of that, I will meet with these people one-on-one to coach
Right.
them and to help them develop, and then to see them grow through that experience and be able to offer their gifts to God in worship. It's just very rewarding and very fulfilling.
Nice. Nice.
So that's one thing that I've enjoyed, through the years. But and most of my tenure here, I have worked with a children's choir and a youth choir and an adult choir, so I've tried to work with all ages, and that's been good. But after I had been here a year, we did a Christmas concert in the sanctuary with the orchestra, and the pastor came to me right after the concert. He said, "Would you consider next year doing a living Christmas tree and doing something just like you did tonight, but just putting it up on a tree?" And I had been involved in that in Montgomery, and I knew
Oh,
the amount of work it went into, so I kind of was moved forward with fear and trembling. But we ended up doing that. And so we had refurbished our sanctuary the following year. We added a balcony. We redid the choir loft. So they, in redoing it, they built supports underneath the choir loft that would accommodate being able to hold the weight of
oh,
a Christmas
interesting.
tree. So they
Interesting.
made all those adjustments, and we started the next year. And we think we've just completed 22 years of doing the living Christmas tree,
Wow.
or I'm getting ready for one this year.
Yep.
But the thing I've loved about that most, our first year we had 75 singers sing on the tree, and probably the most we've ever had is about 128. but we generally run anywhere from 85 to 110 singers each year. And then we
Wow.
have a 30-piece orchestra that comes in and accompanies us. And the choir does everything by memory. They do not have prompters, so they learn everything. And I think that's a form of discipleship in itself. They're
Right.
really
Sure. Sure.
committing everything to their hearts. And then we have about 30 committees in throughout the church that work to make it happen behind the scenes. So
My
it's an
goodness.
effort where you see the whole church come together to really produce
Wow.
something and present something to our church and our community and our region. And they're very proud of it and are excited about it. So it really brings the church together, but it really has become quite the tradition in our church as well as our region. And then we've
Wonderful.
been able to have at least one service each year on live stream. And I've had people from Spain, Japan, Hawaii,
Oh.
all across the states watch it. And we hear that. And I thought, wow, to go into all the world and preach the good news. I mean, that's a way we've been able to share God's love. So that's just a very exciting part of what I do here, and part that's brought a lot of joy and to me through the years and continues to do so.
That's
Um,
anything
in re
else?
in rebuilding our youth choir, after about a year, I started doing annual choir tours,
Right.
and would always try to incorporate mission components as well as our singing, but doing mission projects, whether it's with Mission Arlington or whether it was with a homeless shelter or serving in a soup kitchen. We've always tried to incorporate some of those things, and then we've try to always incorporate Bible studies every day and share times within our own group. And it's just a time that we look forward to through the year, in a time of bonding and growth in that experience that you're able to build on for the coming year. And I I just treasure. I'm
Yeah.
not doing the youth choir now. My associate is doing it. So
Okay.
it's been a hard thing to turn over, but I've needed
Yeah.
to because of other
Yeah.
responsibilities.
Sure.
But I've loved those years of working with our youth and just
Yeah.
discipling them through music and just seeing the growth. And one thing that's neat about being at a church for 25 years, I've had children that was in my children's choir that were in my youth choir. They're now singing in my adult choir, or
Oh,
they come back and they sing on the Living Christmas Tree, even if they sing for a season. But
right.
it's just wonderful to see that progression and experience them
Yeah.
in different stages of life.
Wow. That's just so beautiful. That's so beautiful. From generation to generation. Yeah.
Yes,
Love
yes.
that. Love that. Well, I mean, it really sounds, Mark, like you have been on the whole a fortunate fellow. You know, a lot of great things have happened in your tenure at First Baptist Gainesville. However, you and I know each other, have known each other well enough over the years that I'm aware that there occasionally have been some hard times in the midst of all the joy of work and one-on-one relationships. And while we're not going to get into the weeds about this too much or specifics, I think folks would like to know, how do you weather the storms? How do you weather the hard times that inevitably come to us all, regardless of the length of our tenure?
I've jokingly said there's been many times that on Monday morning I have resigned in my head. No, not out loud, maybe to my wife or to,
Right,
close
right,
friends.
yeah,
And yeah, we've had some hard times in staff relationships. We've had some hard times that have affected our church as a whole.
yeah,
And I think the thing I have to keep coming back to is I fully believe God called me to come and be here as the minister of music.
okay,
And so I hold on to that call, and I love the people in our church.
mm,
And that has been a staying power for me, just the relationships that I've built over the years. And so
mhm,
during hard times, I have found myself just really trying to focus on the relationships, one by one, just caring for the people that God's, put in my care, whether it's through phone calls, visits, pastoral care during crises, and just trying to do something. There have been many days I've said, okay, what is one thing I can do today to make a difference in a person's life?
Mm.
and try to
Okay.
accomplish that every day. If it's just
Right.
one person or one act that I know will make a difference, you know. And then in hard times, learning to speak up when necessary, but also learning to keep your mouth shut at times, learning which battles are worth fighting and which ones you've just got to let someone else take care of.
Oh my. Now that requires some maturity and some wisdom and some self-discipline, I would think.
Yes. Um, it's been hard at times, but
Okay.
also there's been times I've reached out to a trusted counselor just to talk through issues, or I've
Mhm.
reached out to a couple of trusted friends within our music ministry that I knew I could talk
Mhm.
to them, it'd be okay. And that's been helpful because sometimes they would kind of help you see the situation from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been
Wow.
very helpful to just help me move forward. You
Uh-huh.
know?
Uh-huh.
So, and then another thing that I quote often is verse from a hymn, The Solid Rock.
Okay.
His oath, his covenant, his blood support me in the whelming flood.
Yeah.
When
Okay.
all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay.
Oh my.
Can't tell you how many times I have said that over 25 years, but
Nice.
it's true. And
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that Christ is the rock on which I stand. And I know I hear of people getting burned out in ministry, and and I know that's a reality. But at the same time, I think, uh, uh, how can we have burnout in something that's eternal? Our
Mm.
work is eternal.
Yeah.
Our what we do makes a difference for eternity, and just trying to focus on that.
Yeah. 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 Well, thank you. Um, yeah, we probably all should memorize more hymns and more scriptures to carry us through the floods and to make sure the water does not overwhelm the boat we're riding in. Yeah. Hey, shifting gears a little bit, if you could start over, if you were right out of seminary or something, if you could put your mind in that framework, what would you do differently? What do you think you would do differently? And maybe nothing. Maybe what you've done is what God has called you to do, and it's in your wheelhouse and your set of gifts. But is there anything that you would do differently if you could start over?
That's a hard question to answer.
Okay.
I know even going through seminary, I really always thought I would end up teaching piano like in a college or seminary. Even
Mm,
starting seminary, I didn't think I would end up in local church ministry. But in taking a class, I had to take several theology classes, and one was the book of Jeremiah. And it was during that study that God just plainly showed me that He was calling me to local church ministry.
I
So I
see.
kind of switched gears and
Right.
made that turn even during seminary. And we all have hard places we serve. We have mountaintop places, and
Mm,
I've had both. But you learn through all of those situations.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
feel I don't know that there was a lot that I would change. I do know that it's under the stress of getting ready for Sunday or the expectations of producing different events or different concerts or things. It's really hard or it's really easy to get caught up in all that programming and let your relationship suffer.
Mm,
And I think
okay.
if I had things to do over again, I would be much more intentional about building relationships and spending quality time with people in my church and, particularly with my colleagues, with fellow clergy and their families,
Mhm.
spend time apart from the church in social settings where we can just enjoy each other and get to know each other away from the stress of work.
Well,
I kind of I try to be more intentional about that now, but I wish I had done that really all through my ministry.
wow,
So
what a what what a
uh,
what what a good word and a great reminder. regardless of where we are, whether we're early career, mid career, or late career. That's a word fitly spoken. And thinking about that, just as a way to sort of wind down our conversation, is there any advice that you might be willing to give, especially to early career and mid career folks?
Um, well, I think, having the sense of call to ministry is extremely important. Um, I, I try to remember that what God calls you to do, He will equip you to do. And sometimes you're called and asked to step out your comfort zone to do things, or create things, but just, you know, rely on God to provide what you need, and to constantly look to Him for guidance and for discernment in what you're doing on a daily basis, and how to prioritize your work on a daily basis. Sometimes my wife and I'll talk in the morning about, well, what you got on your agenda today? And well, I can list two or three things, but I don't always know, because I won't always be open to what God may put in my path, who He may put in my path,
Okay.
opportunities for ministry, opportunities for connection. So you just want to not get so caught up in your workloads that you uh, are not open to these opportunities, because God gives us opportunities every day to
Sure.
build bridges, to connect, to make relationships, and just to be His presence to other people. So, that would be one thing that I would suggest. On a lighthearted note, when you're trying to line up your choir on a Sunday morning, and
Yeah.
you know, I have to remember that in the Bible, God refers to us as sheep, and how much tending sheep need. Because
Right.
for some choir members, that is a new experience every Sunday of our.
Every Sunday. You mean even if
And
they're a veteran singer, it's a new
yes, it's a
experience.
new experience. And uh,
Oh,
if you get
that's
too
funny.
exasperated, you just yell, "Meet me in the choir loft," to quote a song from Pepper Choplin, and just go for it.
Oh,
But
that's so funny.
that's something that you kind of deal with over and over. But for some reason, it never gets easy. But I would say, I guess one important thing is that there is joy in the journey and not just
Yeah,
the destination. We're all moving upward, we're moving heavenward in our work, in our lives, as we journey. But there's so much joy in the journey. Uh,
absolutely.
and I'm
Yeah,
going to quote
well
another
said.
hymn. We're marching to Zion, because it says, "The hill of Zion yields 1,000 sacred sweets." And there are many thousands and thousands of sacred sweets we can enjoy
Sacred sweets.
every day. We can
Oh,
enjoy in our worship services. So I like to just be reminded of that we can experience heaven on earth. We can experience heaven in our work, not just looking forward to a day when everything's going to be perfect, but enjoy it
yeah.
in the journey. So that would be one thing I would suggest.
Wow. Wow. What a great place to end, musing on the sacred sweets of worship and music ministry. Thank you so much, Mark, for your time today. Thank you for this conversation. And thank you for encouraging all of us who are still on this journey. And again, to you, we are celebrating with you 25 years of ministry and wish for you many more. We really do.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. It's
Yeah.
great to be
Yeah.
with you.
And to all of our listeners, breathe, bless, and be well.